Okay, welcome to video number 6 in our series of building our Pinball 2.0 kit. For this video, we're going to go through building our drop target bank for Evel Knievel, but we're going to build it up from scratch. And mainly because you can't buy the this vintage style anymore. Now, it could be that for our kit we actually find some more modern version of that 5 drop target bank, but I think if you want to keep it authentic, this is an option. And also this could come in handy for people that are maybe trying to restore other games and they want the actual exact drop target bank. I'll include a parts list in the project document. Most of this stuff you can buy from either Marco or Pinball Life. You can even get these sheet metal pieces from Marco. Now the caveat is that oftentimes my experience has been that the ones you get from Marco, some of these hole locations are not quite right. And so what I've done is I've actually had these the designs sent out to Send Cut Send and have the parts made. If you want to go that route, I will include the cart to make these parts. It's not going to be cheaper, but you might find that some of these parts just not available at Marco, or you might decide that like you get a slightly better quality in terms of like hole placement and stuff like that. Anyway, so you will be able to buy these parts from Send Cut Send, and I'll include a cart for that in the project document. All right, I'm going to start by assembling the sheet metal parts first. Now on the original games, you might have noticed, if you have one, that they use these self-tapping, these are number 832 self-tapping screws. It has a little bit of a taper at the end and a slight little cut so that it makes the threads as you screw it in. I'm not really a big fan of these for this project, but you can just, the correct way I think would be to just take get a tap. This is an 832 tap and a tap handle, and then if you don't have cutting fluid, I just use a little bit of WD-40 in here. And then for all of the holes that are designed for tap, you basically just tap it like this. There's probably videos online about how to tap it, and I would use a tap handle. Don't use a drill motor. And you basically just run it through here, back it up occasionally until you get it all the way through. When you're about that far through, you've maxed out the threads for this sort of thin sheet metal, and then back it out. Okay, now you have your thread. And the screws I like to use, they're slightly shorter. These are still number 832, but it has a built-in washer. This is captured. It's a lock washer that's captured on there, and you can see that fits in like so. All right, so that's my preferred method to make threads, is to basically just use a 832 tap instead of trying to use self-tapping screws. All right, now once you've tapped everything, and you should know which ones need to be tapped, because it's either going to be a clearance for an 8 or a tap for an 8. The only exception is going to be on the back plate. These holes here are for the switch mounts, and these are going to be, it's kind of an oddball. It's going to be a number 540 thread. But we'll get to that one. We'll get to that one later. All right, we're going to start with the sides, and the way the sides work. These are the mounting flanges. They're going to be to the outside, This is the top. The targets are facing this way, so this is the front. And so this would mount like so. And then we'll put a couple screws in here. And we're not going to tighten these up all the way. We just want these loose so that everything lines up before we really tighten it down. We want it to be nice and square. Okay. So I want this to still be loose, okay? And then we'll do the other side. All right, now we have the two sides on the top, and we'll do the back. All right, the back, again, front, back. And this is where the switches go, and the cams that activate the switch come from the bottom, so this is going to go like so. All right, and then we'll put our screws in. There's going to be 2 screws on the side here, and then we'll hit a couple in the middle. It'll be tricky to get this aligned up here. Okay, we've got the side screws in. Now we're going to put in the screws across the top. And we're just going to go ahead and populate all of these. Okay. All right. All right, now let's put in the bottom. Okay, again, this is the front. And then from the front, there are slots that help align the lever arms that activate the switch. And this is going to go to the outside here. It's going to be on the outside of both the bottom and the top. All right, now we're going to put a screw here and a screw here. And again, we're just doing this loose right now. The whole assembly is going to be very loose until we get all the screws in. I'm not going to do it too tight. Okay, now you notice that this is a 2-piece bottom. Some of these Bally designs are actually 1-piece. I prefer the 2-piece design because what it does is, this is where the drop targets are. This piece here can go up and down a little bit, and it helps set the level of the targets, because when the targets are down, you want the top of the target to be level with the playfield. And so this little adjustment here allows this to go up and down a little bit to set that height. Okay, so this gets mounted on the outside. You notice these holes are elongated, and because this is going through 3 layers of metal, I have a slightly longer screw. This is a 3/8, still 832 by 3/8, and we'll put 1 in each of these holes. Okay. All right, now there's one other piece. This is the bar that holds the springs, and this is going to go through that hole and through this hole and turn like that. And the springs that help pull the drop target down will be mounted from here up to a little hole on the target itself, and it'll help, when this hits, it'll help pull that down. Okay, so let's put that in there. And then a little screw here. Same for the other side. Okay, now we can go back and start tightening all of these screws up And I'm just going to go around and tighten everything up until it's snug. All right, our sheet metal frame's all tightened up. The next thing we're going to do is going to start putting in our reset coils. So we're going to build this out, and we're going to start by putting on some pigtails to make this connectorized. Okay, so we're going to solder our pigtails onto our coils. I made these pigtails. You could refer back to the video about the thumpers, where I go into detail about how do you make these. But the key to remember is that the red is high power, the purple is return, and in my color code I use purple to be on the left, and this drop target's on the left. Notice I'm using the same color code for both of these, just because both of these will be fired at the same time, so there's no really reason to have these two different colors, because they'd be interchangeable. But again, the positive needs to be on the bar side of the diode. Okay, this is a NO 27-2300, meaning it's a 27 gauge magnet wire with 2300 turns, and it comes with a diode attached. We want to make sure that the red is on the bar side of the diode. So when we flip this over, the red's going to be here. All right, and I want to solder this. I typically want to solder these where these are facing up. So, and I've pre-tinned these with solder. And so the red's on that side, and the return black is on this side. Okay, like so. All right, I'm gonna do the other one. All right, so I got both of these. Let's just double check. Yes, the red is on the bar side. The problem would be that if you did not do that, if you had switched them, then this would basically just short out, and it would either blow the transistor of your driver or blow up the diode, one or the other. But it is important to have the diodes on there, because that's gonna, long term, that's gonna save your electronics. All right, let's start mounting this to our sheet metal. Okay, first we're gonna mount our coil to the sheet metal. There's a couple of parts that go to this. So we have the coil stop. Basically, it's a bracket with a piece of iron here, and the idea is that the plunger, when it's pulled in, it should be connecting magnetically to that. So this is on the top, and when I do this, I'm going to start with having these facing out, although I think there could be an option to make this face this way or that way. But let's just start with these facing out. And then on the bottom side, there's a bracket that holds it here, but we want to use one of these wave springs here. And this holds the coil tight in this, so the coil's not moving when it's pulling the plunger up. Otherwise, the magnetic forces in here would want to move this coil as well. All right, the coil stop actually uses the same screws that we used to attach the bracket, so we're going to take these out first. The sheet metal should still all hold together. There's enough screws everywhere for it to hold together. All right, I'm going to put the coil stop here. And because this is now slightly thicker, we're going to use the 3/8 screws. All right, and once these are in, I'm going to tighten that up. Okay, this is in there. It's a little bit loose because I want to make sure it's not misaligned when we do the second piece. But now the coil will go here. Now, if you decide at some later point, if we figure out that this is actually interfering with something else in our wiring, we can disassemble this and then turn it and have the connections facing this way or facing backwards. My guess is that this is not going to work because this is the edge of the play field. This potentially works because it's more towards the middle. this would also work. Actually, for this, let's just go ahead. We're going to put it this way, have this facing the front. And if we don't like it, we can always change it, but we're going to have to take it out to change it. All right, and then this bracket goes here. And we don't forget our wave spring. Put that there. All right. And this can still take, this is only 2 layers of sheet metal, so this could still take our 1/4 inch screws. All right, we're gonna have to squeeze it a little bit to compress that spring, and then put our screw in there. Let me get our second screw. All right, so that looks pretty good. So now we can go around and tighten all of these to get them secure. Okay, I'm going to do that, and then we're also going to do the same thing we just did here. We're going to do it on this side, because this particular design, we're using the coils as they're spec'd in the manual, and the manual has 2 of these coils. You don't always see that on a drop target, but these ones that are really wide, like a 5 or a 6, they often have 2 coils on either side that operate in parallel. All right, now I've got both coils attached. I actually changed my mind. I put these back going this way because I think it's gonna interfere with the mounting holes if this is turned. So we're gonna keep it like that. I don't want to get too clever right now. All right, the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna prep these plungers with the right linkages. We're not gonna need them right away because we still got to do some stuff down here before we attach all this stuff. But let's prep the plungers. Okay, the plunger needs to be connected to these linkage. Now these are normally would be made out of phenolic, and if you can find these online through one of the suppliers, that's great. I wasn't able to do that, so I just laser cut this out of Delrin, and I've used this on a few machines, and it works fine if you can't find the phenolic versions of it. And I'll include a file for this to laser cut in the document notes. All right, but you can buy these linkages and these spring clips. So the way this works is that you would put the linkage through, or sorry, the connecting rod through there. Put your linkages on either side. Okay, and then we want to put the spring clip into that groove. All right, this is a little tricky because I've found that these grooves in these repro parts, the grooves aren't exactly the width they should be, but you basically just take this and this should snap like so, okay? And then you do the same for the other side. Okay. All right. So now that's our linkage. And when we do the final assembly, this will go into here, and then it will connect to our lifting rod. Okay. All right, but we're not gonna put that on just yet. That's gonna be one of the last steps. Okay, the next step is we're gonna put in this lifting bar, and you notice there's a stiffener in the back, so that goes towards the back, and then you just slide it in here, and then these slots should line up with the sidewalls. Okay. One thing we want to do before that is we want to put in these bushings. Okay. You notice the lifting bar has 2 holes. One's bigger the big hole gets a bushing. We're going to go from the inside to the out. And I'll link the part number for this, but basically you just put in one edge and it's split so that it should compress enough once it's split that you get it in, and then it spreads out. Okay. And I put the flat side of the bushing on the inside. Let me do that same here. You get one side in by opening it up a little bit, and then squeeze. Actually, I got the wrong one. Put one side in, then squeeze it, and then get the other side in. Okay. All right. And we need to do the same for the sheet metal here. All right, for the sheet metal, same thing. Only want the flange on the outside, like so. I'll put another one here. All right. Okay, now it goes in there like that. All right. This connecting rod would then go through here. Like that. Now, these connecting rods are hard to find, so what I'm going to do is, even though I have this one, I'm going to show you an alternate way, because if you can't find this, these are much more difficult to make because they have the slot there that needs to be cut. So we're going to do a thing where we have just a brass rod that you could cut on a bandsaw, and then some shaft collars. All right, this is not to the original design, but this could be something you might be forced to do if you can't find these specially made rods. All right, so we get these aligned. Run the brass rod all the way through. Okay, and then there'll be a shaft collar on either side. You might have to unscrew this to loosen it. Okay, so we put a shaft collar on either side, and then we'll mark it and then cut it. All right. And that should be, just give yourself a little bit of margin there. But put one of these on each side, mark it, and then we'll cut it. Okay, so we basically have cut this to length. Now, ideally you would get you'd be able to source the true rod, but I'm sort of deliberately showing you how to do this sort of hacky method, because those rods are going to be hard to find, and you're going to want to have an alternative ready. All right. We don't want to install this just yet because these linkages have to be on this bar, but we also want these bars to be these have to connect to our drop targets also. So we're going to do that step next. All right, let's put together our drop targets. Okay, this is the little ring where the spring goes. This is where the lift bar, or the bracket attached to the lift bar is going to go through. So we start by putting this through that slot. Okay, and then when this is installed, this fits into the other slot that's on the back, and then this little tab is what activates our switch. All right, and now we also have this sort of pivot rod. This one has a shoulder on one side and then a groove on the other. So we'll put it in like so, and then we use, again, another snap ring. And then we put a clip ring here. And the front goes on that bar that we just made. Right, so let's put the clip ring on. Okay. All right, so the coil activates the lift bar, and the lift bar goes underneath this, and it would move that up to do the reset. Okay, now we want to do that for all 5 of our targets, and I want to make sure these are straight, so you may have to sort of bend them a little bit to get them straight. All right, we're going to do that for all 5 of these targets. Okay, so now we have all 5 of these target subassemblies. We're going to want to just take off the spring bar just temporarily, so we're just going to unscrew that, take that off. Okay, we just temporarily remove this bar. Now we're going to want to install these by putting them up through the top hole. The tombstone goes through that top hole. We want this bracket in the back with the switch activation to go through that slot. And we want this first one, the front of that, to sit in the front slot. So it's secured like that. And we're going to do that for all 5 of these targets. Just carefully get that in there. So the top, the back slot, the front slot, and then do that for all 5 of these. Actually, first, before we get that far, let's put the springs on here. And it shouldn't be that, just on the one side. And it shouldn't be that hard. You want to open up one of these ends a little bit and then get that through this hole. Okay, like that. So we want to preload the spring on one end. So let's do that first before we start loading them up. Okay, preloaded all of our drop targets with springs. So now, same thing, up through the top hole. Make sure the back is in the back slot and the front's in the front slot. All right, and we just preload all of these. Okay. All right, I'm going to do this, and I'll meet you when you're done. Okay, these are all in. Now we get our pivot bar. Run it through the first bushing, and then the bushing in the sheet metal, and then we want to carefully run it through each hole that's in the linkage. Sometimes it helps if you twist it a little bit as you're going through, and you're going to want to sort of like manually hold the linkage and line it up, and then push it through. Okay. And then through that last bushing in the sheet metal, and through the bushing in the lift bar. Okay. All right, and then we'll put the shaft collar on the end of this one. Okay. All right. And this piece here is the lift bar. So in theory, those lift like that. Okay. All right. Looking good so far. Okay. Now we're back to our plungers. We need to attach the plunger to the lift bar. We're going to sort of preload the pivot shaft with a snap ring, just one side. Okay. All right, and then we'll take our plunger, put it into the coil sleeve. Did this in the wrong order. All right, we're going to take this off. Okay, we're going to loosen the front bracket here. Okay, now we're just going to turn it slightly to get this plunger in. We don't want to try and take out the whole way, just turn it enough to get the plunger in there. Okay. All right. Now let's put our screws back in there. get that lined up. Okay, so we're all through 3 pieces there, and then put on the snap ring. Oops. All right, so we got the plunger in and the linkage is connected. Now we're going to do the same thing but on the other side, and then I'll meet you once you've done this side. Okay, now we've got both plungers in. We're going to put our spring bar back in. All right, put the screw on the other side, and I'll meet you, and then we'll put the springs on. Okay, so now we want to take these springs, want to open them up a little bit, and then put the that loop at the end, put that loop through that hole, like so, and then tighten it up a little bit if you can. Okay, that's one. This is why preloading helps, because otherwise you'd have to be doing this with little fingers in here. Okay. All right. I'm going to do the rest of these, and then we'll see when we've got it all done. Okay, we've got all of our springs on. So when the coils activate, it comes up. The spring sort of helps pull it forward so that it stays on that landing. And then when it gets hit, the spring helps pull it down. Okay. All right. So all that's pretty good. One last step. We need to put these switches on, and I'm going to walk through that. But essentially, as we said early on, we would have tapped these for a 540, and then these switches go on like that. And they get activated by the back side of the linkage. All right, I'm going to show you how to do that part. Okay, now we're going to install the other switches. All right, do all 5 of these, and then I'll see you when we're done. Okay, we've done all 5. Let's do a little check. Okay, with them all down, we should be able to look across. Okay, so none of those are closed, and they should be closed. So what you want to do is come in with your switch adjuster and adjust that so that when it's in this position, this switch should be touching, right? And it's basically the same way you would adjust a leaf switch. Just turn it until these things are touching. All right. Only step left now. Okay, we're going to call it there for video number 6 in this building the Pinball 2.0 kit for Evel Knievel. We'll cover the installation of this on the playfield along with the other mechs like the auto launch and the trough and the saucer mech. All right, so that's it for this one. Thank you for watching.